Call the meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. All members are present. Approval of the agenda. We have one change, Park Board report. Is there any other changes? Council? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda with that one removal?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Joe, second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Approval of the minutes of the March 15th, 2023 regular meeting. I'll receive them in your packet. Is there any changes, corrections, or clarification needed on those minutes? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to approve the March 15th meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Diane, do I have a second?
No second.
Second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. This brings us to our public open forum. Is there anyone that wants to speak to the council? Is there anyone that would like to speak to the council? Call a third time. Is there anyone that would like to speak to the council? Our public open forum is now closed. We have no public hearings. We'll move on to reports and presentations. CVB annual report. Pam?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. 2022 has been a year of recovery in the tourism industry. Minnesota ranks number 27 for state tourism marketing budget. The reason for this is tourism-based budget has not been increased since 2014. So we are still running on a 2014 overall budget, although everything else has increased. In this year's state budget, it was recommended to increase the budget by $3,884 in 2024 and $746,000 in 2025. These funds are needed to elevate the state to be a top domestic destination. Tourism is a $16 billion industry for Minnesota. It touches almost every industry in the state and is vital for Minnesota economy. Tourism employs 229,000 jobs for Minnesotans. We're falling behind the rest of the country. According to Explore Minnesota Tourism, we are one of 3 states that did not receive a budget increase during the pandemic. Explore Minnesota Tourism is partnering with EDAs to support each other in retaining businesses and increasing growth in our cities. They work hand in hand. As people travel, they're also looking for new lifestyle and new employment. By working together, we can combine our efforts to keep our small towns and businesses financially stable and increase growth. Sauk Center is a part of that effort. So in 2022, our revenue, the hotel tax revenue was $63,612. Our campground tax was $5,065, and we received a $10,000 grant from Explore Minnesota Tourism, which totaled $78,677. And then I listed the expenses. I'm not sure if you got this sheet. You did?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not going to go through that unless there's questions. I can answer those. Visit Sauk Center sent out 2021 issues of the Visitor's Guide. The largest percentage were sent to residents in Minnesota. I attended the virtual Minnesota Explore Tourism Conference in March 2022. One of the highlights of the conference was the keynote speaker, Amanda Brinkman, who spoke about the small business revolution. For those of you who are not familiar with Amanda, she was a leader in the Main Street Revolution. Small towns applied for Main Street makeovers, and Amanda and her team helped revitalize many small towns. This included new storefronts, marketing, and a cooperative effort to create a business model that would improve the financial stability and the history of small towns. She is one of the most creative persons I've ever listened to in years, and I've been involved both with Visit Sauk Center and the Arts in Sauk Center. One thing that she said stands out. We've picked towns that have an active arts community. The reason for this is because of the creative nature of the arts community is helping revitalize the main streets. Visit Sauk Center is still recovering from COVID. I have not done tour bus advertising due to the reluctance of people to be crammed into a bus for long periods of time. Convention advertising is very small since we do not have a large venue for conventions. I thought a new hotel going in, we may be able to once again start advertising for conventions. However, I've heard the hotel is on hold. Coming in 2023, we do not have a bus tour. In 2023, we do have a bus tour coming in the fall and a bike tour of over 200 people coming to the fairgrounds June 22nd, staying one night. We will be providing a welcome bag and sponsoring a band for that evening. Our Explore Minnesota tourism grants have been cut considerably, and they are running 6 months instead of a full year. Advertising becomes more of a challenge since all the ads need to be in that 6-month time frame. From signing the ad contract to publishing of the magazine has to be in that 6-month period. Sauk Center Snowfest has grown from its inception, and we look for that to grow each year. We have teams coming from Canada, Wisconsin, Colorado. Some stay in their trailers, but a good percentage stay in our hotels. Our hotel and campground revenue increased from 2021, and we have started to track the short-term rentals. I see the works Visit Sauk Center in conjunction with other entities is bringing new events and hotel stays to Sauk Center. I'd like to thank the city, police, and especially our Public Works Department for helping to make these events happen. I'd also like to thank the Sauk Center Area Chamber, working collaboratively with Visit Sauk Center to make Sauk Center a place to visit, work, live, and play. Respectfully, Pam Boardman. Any questions?
Questions, comments?
Just one question on the revenue and expenses. The last item carried into 2023 is an expense, $15,389. Is that that's revenue that's still held as an asset, not necessarily an expense, or are those accounts payable that are needed to be paid?
Yes, that is correct. I just, if I had just added up the expenses with the revenue, I would have been $15,000 short in revenue. So I just wanted to make it clear that that was moved over to 2023 to start out the year.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, that's just carrying over for,
We get a lot of advertising. Much advertising for the spring and summer are done in January and February. And in order to pay for that advertising, which is due when you make the contract, I would like to keep money over from the year before so that we can pay for those until the revenue starts to pick up from the campground.
yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Pam, quit praying for snow. Look it out that window. We got a blizzard going there.
I did that.
Oh, good, thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
6B, Ambulance Department Quarterly Report. Kathy?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to present the first quarter report for 2023 for the Sauk Center Ambulance. January started out with a bang. We had 98 total runs for the month, so it was a big month. 15 no loads, 2 ALS transfers, 32 BLS transfers, and 49 medical calls for a total of 98 runs and activities. And that was no special details. That's total runs and patient contacts and that. So last year we had 65 in January, and then that compares to 45 10 years ago. So of those 98 reports in January, 82 of them were billable calls for a total of over $88,000. February, we had 14 no loads, 2 ALS transfers and 12 BLS transfers, and 36 medical calls for a total of 67 runs and activities. And that compares to 72 from last year and 52 from 10 years ago. So of the 67 runs and activities, we billed out 50 of those for a total of just over $53,000. March, if you'll notice, March is only through March 30th. in order to get the report in for this council meeting, I had to cut it off on the 30th. So the numbers here are accurate up to the 30th, but I believe we had 5 more calls on the 31st. So when I do the second quarter report, I'll have the March fully updated. But as of March 30th, we had 22 no loads, 1 ALS transfer and 21 BLS transfers, 35 medical calls. So it totaled 79 through March 30th. Compares to 71 from last year and 55 from 10 years ago. And of those 79 runs for March, we billed out 57 of them for just over $61,000. So the total billed out for the first quarter was $202,560. So yeah, like I said, we started out for 244 is what we're at so far as of March 40th, or March 30th. And that compares to 208 from last year during the first quarter. So we're already up on our calls for the year. You can see the destinations for the transfers vary all over the state again. And all the no loads, why we're going out on no loads. With all the snow that Council Diane already brought up, it's snowing again. We've had a lot of crashes this year. So a lot of no loads with crashes, luckily, where people aren't injured that bad, so it's nice. Mutual aid. We did mutual aid. Melrose had us paged out one time and then canceled us. We were paged over to Glenwood to assist them with transfers 2 different times. One, we declined it due to the weather. There was a blizzard night and we didn't have any backup, so I told the crew, we can't leave town, can't leave our area unattended during a blizzard, so we had to turn that one down. And then one, they got to Glenwood and the patient deteriorated as they were moving them to our cots. Then the doctor decided to send them ALS, and then they're part-time ALS over there, so they were able to take that transfer on their own. Hospital assists, we had returned patient to the residence 3 times. We brought a patient down to St. Cloud for a procedure, and then we bring them back for our hospital, so that's the return trip. And then hospice transport, we did 2 of those for the hospital. And then medicals that we took to other hospitals, Long Prairie 3 times, Melrose once. And then we took a patient to St. Cloud on a social service hold 1 time. And we did have to give up 1 transfer to Melrose. At one point, we didn't have staffing. And we were out on a call already, and we asked if they could hold the transfer until we got back with the call. And it was a critical patient that needed to go out sooner, so we had to call Melrose over, so we gave up 1 to Melrose. And of course, our big news for the first quarter was one of our crews delivered a baby at a residence. So we'll have the stork pin presentations at the next council meeting on April 19th. We'll have those. So it's pretty big news. As far as I know, that's the first baby delivered in the field for Sauk Center ambulance crews. I'll have to check with the former directors and see if there's one before my time maybe or anything, but as far as I'm aware, that's our first one, so we're pretty proud of that. So any questions for me?
At this time of the year, you get a lot of older citizens that are out there trying to shovel and blow snow and they drop over with a heart attack.
Luckily, we haven't had that this year, but that is not that uncommon,
Yeah.
especially with some of that heavy snow that we've had this year.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
We do see that, but we've lucked out this year.
Yep.
Still
Thank
got
you.
some snow coming though, so I'll knock on wood.
Any other questions? Keep up the good work.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Park board was scratched. EDA report. Vicky?
So the EDA board met today in regular session. They had a few things on their agenda. The report from the chamber reminds everybody of the Sauk Center Chamber Spring Out event on April 22nd. And Sauk Center Opportunities is having their annual meeting on April 10th, if anybody's interested in that board. They did discuss the Authors Edition project, and now they're starting to talk about lot sale options and how we will go forward with that. Still waiting on the response from SHPO regarding the SCDP application for Main Street Drug. So we have a couple more weeks, and then we can basically assume that they're not going to respond. Received a report on the Nature Energy Tour in Denmark from Heidi and Jeannie. And then we also discussed some land options for them in and around Sauk Center. So we're still working with them. In fact, I had like 5 contacts with them today itself. And we have received another request for an SCDP loan and grant The application isn't in here in my office yet, but I know it's coming, and they just got the closing finalized last week. And then also, we talked about some pending legislation as it relates to zoning and economic development. There's a lot of things happening in the legislature right now that affect cities. Hopefully, they're going to be gone for a week, so things will slow down a little bit, so everybody can catch up and understand what it is they're trying to do. Of course, of the 6,000 bills that get introduced, not all of them ever get passed, so you're just going to have to follow them and see which ones are actually going to impact the city. So I'll have a legislative report later when it gets a little closer till we know what's actually going to affect us. And there is no action items from the EDA tonight.
Questions, comments? Okay, we'll move on to action items. 7A, approve resolution 2023-25 awarding bid for 2023 Authors Edition project.
So we have, the bids were opened for the Authors Edition project on March 30th at 11 a.m. We had 10 bids that we received that I have listed in there, and the low bid is Keekly Underground for $1,334,774.58. But before you award the bid, I know we had a conversation about you wanted to talk about that sidewalk, and so Keith is going to come up here and talk about that, and then any other questions you might have about the project before we go to the resolution.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. Don't have a lot to say other than that the sidewalk came in at a total cost of about $52,000 for the project as a whole. In terms of the unit price, it's pretty much what we estimated. Theirs was maybe just a hair higher than we had estimated for that portion, but wasn't a significant variance from what we had. So we've talked about it before. We thought we would bid it with it, and then you would revisit and decide whether you wish to pull it in or out. If you choose to pull it out or keep it in, either way, we would still, if you choose to award it based on the base bid, and then if your direction is to pull it out, we would do a change order to pull it out afterwards. So that's how that would work procedurally. So other than that, if there's any questions that you might have of me prior to making your decision?
Questions?
I have one question. If the northern lines, compared to the Keekly, had a difference in the sidewalk price that makes northern lines any less?
Yes, and unfortunately, I'm sorry, the bid tab was, I guess, inadvertently not put in your packet. We do
Right.
have it, and we can make that available to everybody if you wish to see it afterwards. But for the concrete walk, northern lines was actually a little bit higher per unit
Okay.
than low bidder was.
Okay,
Just so you know, the low bid was $5.58 a square foot. Northern Lines was $6.10 a square foot. Lowest I see, just quickly looking through, I see one that's $4.65. And you never know, they can move prices around, so you never quite know.
I just question.
$5, $5.50.
Yeah.
So the low bid is kind of where most everybody else is at.
But all these bids came in with the sidewalk in it.
That's with the sidewalk, that's
Okay.
correct. Everyone bid on the same thing.
So tonight, when we come to this action, we can decide if we want it in or leave it as is, or we
Right.
can actually change it later as a change order.
You could change it later, it's not imminent that we do it tonight, but if you decided you felt like you want to do tonight, you would award and then provide direction to remove that portion from the project.
Okay. Everyone understand that?
Yep.
Okay. Questions, comments for Keith or Vicky? I know, based on the bid, Finance Committee's got to sit down and figure out how this is going to get handled. The one thing is on the sidewalk, I think, eventually it's all going to end up being there anyway. So for $50,000, yeah, it's $50,000, but I think it needs to be put in or left in, is my opinion.
I agree with you.
Because
Chief.
eventually, that whole area is gonna need sidewalk, and we're just gonna go back and disrupt everybody's
Right.
yards and everything after they've been there for a while, and then we come along and decide to put a sidewalk in. It's gonna
And-
just cause problems.
this, if I remember right, this bid was only for sidewalk on one side of the street, not both sides, correct?
That's
correct.
Yeah.
So do I have a motion to approve Resolution 2023-24, awarding the bid?
I'll make the motion.
And that would be for Keekly Construction?
Right,
Quickly underground.
Oh, okay, underground.
that's the one.
Okay. Got a motion by Diane. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Heidi will second it. Any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Aye.
Motion carries 4 in favor, none against, 1 abstention. 7B, approve resolution 2023-26, accepting quote for library boiler installation.
So if you recall at a prior meeting, Ben had reported about the boiler going out in the library. And so we did now receive quotes for for that replacement. It's the same equipment, each of them, and one was from Central Heating and Air for $4,472, and the other one was from Kleinschmidt Plumbing and Heating for $6,500. So we're recommending to approve Resolution 2023-26, accepting the quote for the library boiler from Central Heating and Air for $4,472.
Questions? Comments? It's quite the spread.
Yeah, it is.
Do I have a motion to approve Resolution 2023-25, awarding the bid to Central Heating and Air?
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Motion by Shellen, seconded by Joe. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7C, approve ordinance 823, amending fee schedule, rental inspection and licensing.
So we had adopted ordinance 792, implementing a residential licensing and inspection program to be included in the City Code Chapter 119. Licenses and permits are established by code. So here in front of you have an ordinance adding these fees to the city's rental licensing and inspection program. And we came up with the following fees, and this is based on, after speaking with a bunch of other different cities and different inspectors and how it should be handled. And so what we're looking at is a license fee of a base fee per building and then so much per unit after that. So once you're at the building, you know, if it's one building, it would be like $120, but if you had a duplex, it's another $20, and if it's threeplex, it's another $20. So it's not $120 per unit,
Yeah.
but you arrive at the building for that amount, and then each unit is $20. If there's a reinspection, if something needs to be rechecked afterward, then there is a $50 fee. You'll get your first reinspection at no charge. Like if somebody just missed something, you go back and check and make sure it's okay, but if they keep not doing what they're supposed to be doing, then there would be a fee. If the inspector shows up, there's a no-show fee of $50. Like if you set up an appointment with them to go in and see it and then they're not there. There's a failure to register is if somebody after a time frame that we're going to set never does contact us to register, we could impose that if we felt like it. And then there's also a fee if there's a complaint that needs to be inspected and resolved by the inspector. The majority of complaints that we have from rental inspectors are bugs and mold. So those are the two things that you might find that we would have a complaint on, or maybe an inspector refuses to fix something, water dripping out of a light fixture, I've had that one, I've had a lot of different kinds of them. So a lot of times if you're responding to a complaint, then we need to have something to pay the inspector. So what we're looking at is ordinance 823, amending our fee schedule to include these residential rental licensing and inspection fees. And keep in mind, this is a new program for us. We might find that it's not enough, or it may be more than it should be. So we would be subject to maybe possibly amending these, annually when we do our fee schedule. But this is just to get it into action. Do you have any questions on those?
What was our initial proposed licensing fee when we were having those public hearings and everything that we kind of broached?
We
Was it about
had a
$120?
range all the way from like $100, and it could have been up to $200. So we
Okay.
had kind of that range. It was pretty broad range because we weren't certain yet. But
Okay.
after we started drilling down a little bit, we find this to be more in line with what other cities are charging.
Okay.
The one thing that I think was been talked about a little bit as had originally talked about doing an inspection every 3 years. From what I understand, it's looking like maybe we should be doing this renewal every year. Because talking to some of the property owners, a lot of damage can happen in 3 months, 4 months. And then if it's right after an inspection, by the time you get to that third year, it could be totally destroyed.
Oh, yeah.
We're not inspecting it for what the tenants are doing to the property. For the property owner, are we inspecting this to make sure that the landlords are providing, appropriate housing to their tenants?
Right, but a renter can change that. They could tear the hand railings off going down steps.
Or the smoke detectors, they can
And
tear them
within a
out.
year, that means,
So this is, we're making the assumption that the landlords want us going in annually then? Is that what you're telling me?
that would be our decision to make anyway.
I think there's also something to be said, though, regarding residential versus apartment living too, which might be a difference in length of time of lease or the type of property. I don't know. I think a year seems a little, I don't want to say an overreach, but I've heard 2 years might be a little more common than 3 years, but 3 years might give a little too much length of time for things to happen, where 2 years might be more in line with other jurisdictions or cities, but a year seems a little too frequent, in my opinion.
Well, and we could go with 2 years and just change it. It's our ordinance. We can,
Another thing that I found that cities are licensing every year, but inspecting every other year. So you relicense it every year, but you require an inspection every second year.
I see.
But I found a lot of them that started that way ended up inspecting every year anyway. Something always came up. So it was like, these fees are actually low enough if you did an annual inspection, that probably wouldn't be an issue. I think if we had a higher fee, people would balk at it. We also discussed, is what we have in town too many to get done in a year? And I was assured, no, that's not the case. And I talked to like 4 different rental inspectors with that question. And they said, oh, no, that's, the number of units you have would be no problem. So, I mean, you guys are going to make that final decision if we want to make this annual or biannually.
So should we then separate a license fee versus an inspection fee?
Well, how this is going to work is that basically you'll collect these. The license fee is something that the inspector gets a percent of, so it's built
Right.
into that fee.
Yep.
So, if you're going to do license and then inspection, we might have to talk about that in the contract. But right now, it's set up that the inspector gets a percent of the license fee, the no-show fee, the reinspection fee. The failure to register is the city's. So it's like depending on what item it is, but there would be a percentage of that fee paid to the inspector each year. So if you weren't going to inspect every year, then you might have a lower license fee for the year that you're not inspecting.
So we should really set this, we should set our frequency tonight according to this fee schedule of what this is actually covering and what length of time.
And if you want to have this fee scheduled to be for a 2-year period or 1-year period, and you could do that tonight.
any other comments?
Well,
Or you could wait until we appoint the inspector and then ask his input on how he feels about the inspection process and how that would work. It might help you decide 1 year versus 2 year.
I owned a bunch of rent property in Texas, a lot of it. And I tell you what, a tenant can destroy a property in less than a year. Very easy. If you make a mistake and pick the wrong tenant, they kick the windows out of them, they flush concrete down your brand-new sewer line. I've seen them just totally destroy a property.
I think what I was finding from some of the landlords was they were like, yeah, come and inspect because then you're the heavy and I can use you as my excuse
Sure.
to evict or whatever it is
Yeah.
with tenants that
Yeah.
aren't so good. So it can go both ways. You'll have your good tenants and then you'll have your tenants that aren't so great.
The one question I got is say a rental unit fails to register. What's our protocol as far as where we're gonna go with that, as far as we can tell them, you can know, you're not getting a license to rent, but they just keep doing it anyway besides the fact.
So in the code that we set up, a failure to register can be a 1099 offense, so then we would go to our city attorney, and the city attorney would be in contact with them. So then it becomes a violation, it can become a misdemeanor if they fail to register. You know, hopefully it'll never get to that point. Sometimes that attorney letter is enough to, oh, I better do this.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're not the ones going and knocking on their door all the time. We'll notify them, and after a couple notifications, they don't, then they'll get the letter from the attorney.
Okay,
But it'll take a year to fill these all in.
right.
I personally think it's better to do it yearly, and then if you find out you're not having as many problems, then back it off to every other year. But I would rather go with every year to start.
I'm just a little confused here that we're looking at, the tenants destroying units for the landlords, and I thought this was to provide, adequate, acceptable housing to the tenants, versus, making sure that we're going in there inspecting it for the landlords to make sure that property owners or the tenants not destroying it. I mean, their lease agreement should give them the ability to inspect their own units to make sure the tenant's not destroying it.
I see where you're coming from on that, but what I'm looking at is the fact that you rent it out. 7 months later, you find out they wrecked the place. You evict them. Now, you still got 2.5 years if you want to. You can rent it without having to fix a whole lot up and putting it back to where the next person coming in the door actually has a decent place to live. That's more what this is all about.
I guess I would think somebody comes into a destroyed house, they may not rent it, but again, you can see anything. People live in anything. I understand that too.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the reason why I can see less than, not 3 years anymore.
Well, and to Joe's point, though, I guess I would see it kind of similar to what he's saying. I mean, if you have some of those issues, somebody's not going to be renting, and they're going to walk away with their dollar. So it's advantageous, I would think, of the landlord who wants to stay in business to make sure that some of those things are fixed up. So otherwise, people won't.
It is for the protection of the tenant. That's basically why it was initially
Right.
done. But sometimes, without the inspection, the landlord's not so inclined to fix some of these things if they know an inspection's coming up. So you can look at it both ways. I think, it's totally up to you if you want to do 1 or 2 years. Just what we found out there with more research.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Do I have a motion to approve the ordinance with the timeline?
I'll make the motion.
What is the timeline?
What timeline?
I would make it every year, and then if we're not having problems, we can always back it off to every other year, next time this comes up. But for now, we need to get it going.
Okay. Do we have a second? I'll second it. Is there any other discussion? Concerns?
It seems a little vague, and I think it opens us up for getting a ball of worms of questions for that. So if we're starting off with every year, but we get the option to pull back, that seems a little open-ended. If we set the license fee as a yearly fee, but set our inspections in a rotating 3-year, that might make a little more hard, fast, concrete thing for landlords to be able to understand. And I thought that's kind of what we were discussing earlier. If it's a yearly fee, 3-year inspection, or 2-year inspection, maybe just making it a little more manageable. I feel like a yearly inspection is over the top, but that's just my personal opinion.
The one thing is, we gotta look at the license fee.
That's what I'm thinking is,
Say it's $120, you're only talking, if there's no other units, besides that, you're only talking $10 a month. And you know darn well they're gonna pass that on to their
Oh,
tenant.
sure.
so,
It's really not costing them anything other than what's gotta get fixed, if there is anything.
but if they're, this is where I'm kind of confused. Are we setting the license fee to be an annual fee with the inspection on what basis? What, are we doing annual basis, second, 2-year basis, 3-year basis? So Diane made the motion of
Annual.
annual with annual inspection.
Right.
Is that how I'm understanding it?
Yeah.
But we can look at it down the road and adjust it. That was her motion.
Once the inspector starts, maybe he'll decide, well, I only need to look at this once every 3 years or once every other year. We can change that.
That's where I'm kind of feeling a little leery on, it feels too open-ended.
One of the things, and we could look at that in reverse, and I could go either way, 1 year or 2 years. Maybe we make it every other year, and then if we see if there's a problem, we gotta get a handle on it, then we go to 1 year. Do it in reverse. Make it more restrictive rather than less restrictive after we get our feet wet and know what we're actually getting into. But we have a motion on the table right now, so,
I'll change it, Chief. I like that way of looking at it.
okay? We got a,
But it's an annual fee, right? An annual, Rental fee,
annual fee with every other year inspection?
right.
Now we're going backwards. Okay, the motion was annual fee with annual inspection.
Right.
With the option to get more lenient later, possibly move it to 2-year, is what you suggested. Her motion was to possibly change it in the future. So that's what I'm just trying to clarify. And is that the motion then? Are we amending the motion? Do we need to vote on the original motion and then?
The original motion was annual license, annual inspection.
Right.
Okay,
And we have to vote on that before we can entertain another motion.
Unless she vote motion and second to amend it.
Okay, well, I made the motion to amend it.
Okay? So you amended it to,
Annual fee, inspection every other year.
okay? Any questions?
So annual fee, biannual inspection.
Right.
And I'll stay with my second.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Everyone's understanding all this? Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay. We have a motion and a second. I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7D, approve appointment of residential rental inspector and authorized contract.
So on Thursday, March 23rd, interviews were conducted for the position of rental inspector for the city. This is an independent contractor and not an employee position. 4 individuals were interviewed. At the conclusion of the interview, the panel recommends the appointment of Central Minnesota Inspections, who is Kelly Kerfeld, for the position. I know that you all realize that Kelly does have rentals in Sauk Center, and so we have arrangements with Alexandria to conduct the rentals for his units. So it is our hope that we hold him to a little bit higher standard than the other rentals in the city, because he would be our inspector. And so we're looking to approve the appointment of Central Minnesota Inspections as rental inspector and authorize the mayor and myself to enter into a contract with him.
Questions? Comments? I'm just running the meeting. I'm removing myself from the vote on this, so.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Motion by Diane, with a second.
I'll second. I'm comfortable with the fact we've got a, outside party to, check his rentals, so.
We have a motion by Diane, second by Joe, to appoint Kelly Kerfeld. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Aye. Motion carries 4 in favor, none against, 1 abstention. 7E, approve appointment of planning commission member.
As you know, the planning commission shall consist of 5 members, which are appointed by the city council. One member is from the council and 4 shall be residents of the city. We had the term of Linda Reagan, which expired on December 31st, and we now have a nomination for that position, which is Ted Spanier. So we're looking to approve the appointment of Ted Spanier to the Planning Commission effective April 6th, 2023, and expiring December 31st, 2025.
Questions, comments? Do I have a motion to approve the appointment of Ted Spanier?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Shallen,
I'll second.
second by Joe. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7F, approve advancement of EMTs.
So Kathy Struford, ambulance director, had submitted the following advancements for the council, along with actually 2 resignations, so I have a little bit of an amendment. We're going to cross Brian Zales off of your packet because we actually started him out at EMT B1 because he is a paramedic, so we don't need to advance him. So we have Amy Hall from a probationary EMT to EMT B1 effective April 6th. Cheryl Braun from an EMR, which was a driver, and a first responder to probationary EMT, March 30th, because she has passed her tests. Quentin Swittenberg from an EMT B2 to an EMT B3, May 15th, 2021. He has some back pay coming. His anniversary date was missed. We have Casey Klein as a resignation effective April 3rd, and Tim Duval effective March 31st. So we're looking to approve these advancements and the resignations as presented.
Questions, comments?
I'm assuming, Kathy, that you could always, with the 2 resignations, you could always use more. Okay.
Any other comments? Do I have a motion to approve the advancements and the resignations as presented?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Shallen. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7G, approve appointment of campground attendant and summer seasonal.
So we have the interviews for the campground attendant or manager were held on Tuesday, April 4th. We have a recommendation that the following appointments be made. This is based on, the pay rate is based on a five-day on, 3-day off work schedule. So, and then, of course, the other one is 3 days on, 5 days off. We have Bruce Berg, $93.75 for the season over 11 weeks, beginning May 1st, plus a campground site. And Doug and Cindy Railinger, $46.25 for the season over 11 weeks, and a site at the campground. So the total budget for the 2 together is $14,000. And when we get the schedule going, if the schedule alters, then we will change that proration accordingly. So they'll be paid, they first work off their site, and then they get a flat rate per day after that. And we're also requested to approve the summer seasonal appointment for Parks and Streets. Dwayne Waletzko, he will come in at step 5. This is a returning position to the Parks and Streets. We still are advertising for summer seasonal, so if anybody has an interest in that, I believe there's 1 full-time seasonal and then 1 part-time seasonal to work, mostly in the park department, but there would be some street work as well. So we are looking for those appointments as presented.
Questions, comments?
You said Bruce Berg, and who was the other?
Doug and Cindy Railinger, they've been the backup for the last
Okay.
3 years. They're coming back.
So is it truly one is a primary and the other is a backup, or?
Yeah, the Bruce is the primary.
Okay.
And this is the first year that the Railingers will actually take a paycheck. Before they were just working for their site. So we're gonna kind of back off on the days for the primary to work, and then they'll pick up a few more days, to kind of balance that out, and to give the primary a little more free time.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Do I have a motion to approve those appointments?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Diane. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7H, approve closure of Sinclair Lewis Avenue and Oak Street for Chalk in Sauk event.
So Pam Boardman, on behalf of the 510 Art Lab, has requested that we approve the closure of Sinclair Lewis Avenue and Oak Street for the annual Chalk and Sock event. Pam, make sure I got these times and dates right. So the event will start on Friday, June 23rd, and end on Sunday, June 25th. I think the road closure can start at 6 p.m. on Friday and open back up on Sunday afternoon. The roads requested are Sinclair Lewis Avenue from Main to Oak, and then Oak from Main, is it to Second or to Park Road?
Just to, Oak. Not Park, not to Park.
Okay, so Oak down to Second Street. then.
Second
So the
Street,
one block and
okay.
then the one block. And then the times would be, was 6 PM on Friday to Sunday,
5
5
p.m.
PM. So that is the request.
That's the chocolate sauce.
Right.
5 minutes.
Okay. Questions, concerns?
I thought it was an amazing event last year, so all
Are the-
for it.
Are those times different than the closures last year, or the same?
We had closed it all day Friday last year.
Okay.
And this is at 6 PM. And I did have a recommendation from the chief because of the bars and everything. They didn't like that it closed on Friday night, so they would prefer that the closure start Saturday morning. And he also had a recommendation that the street be cleaned afterward. And so that, because it stayed on pretty much all summer, kind of, and whether there was a way that that could be washed off or cleaned off.
Okay.
So those were the kind of the two things I'm bringing from the chief, because he's not here.
Was there a reason he requested it to be cleaned off?
I think it was, he felt it looked, after it started to wear off, it started to kind of look just more like messy and graffiti.
It looked,
Oh,
he thought it looked like graffiti on his regular, and we've got an ordinance against it. And we were told originally that after a few rainfalls, it'd be gone. Well, 3 months later, it's still there. So whatever they were using was more than just chalk.
It's a chalk paint, is what
Right,
it is.
it's a paint, but, you know, he just didn't like the look of the downtown area that many weeks after the fact, so that was his
So
recommendation.
he was questioning whether there was a way that could be cleaned off or
Right.
washed off afterward.
Plus you're blocking all the parking for the bars. They can't make a living on the weekend.
Well, the only thing about closing it at 6 o'clock at night is basically overnight, nothing's gonna happen on that street anyway, so if we close it at 6 o'clock in the morning, the next morning,
I
it's
guess,
gonna
I don't know, if you
affect.
have questions
That's a
for
question
Pam,
for Pam, I'm
she'll come
sure.
up and
Right,
answer them.
yeah.
Yeah,
So the question would be, how much advanced time was spent on the roads on Friday versus Saturday morning?
Well, that's why we changed it from all day Friday to Friday at 6, because we will have artists coming in, and they will be bringing in equipment and supplies for the Top Fest, and I'm not sure if some people will start Friday evening. I don't know that for sure.
Mm.
But we have 15 artists coming each.
And compared to last year?
We have 10.
Okay, so 5 more, so it's getting bigger. And they will have, I mean, already the artwork last year was just amazing. I feel it, 6 o'clock is not putting anybody out too much then.
I think when his recommendation was not to do it Friday night was, in addition to the bars, it was just the traffic that goes through town on Fridays that's trying to turn there.
Yeah.
And then, but now without Park Road and Second Street being under construction, I think that's gonna help,
Yeah.
that people can get around. You know.
yeah, I know we had some feedback with that, with some of the rescue calls and stuff we had last year, so, with having that closed for that time. So that's why I was wondering where the times were different.
I think last year, if I remember correctly, it was closed already at noon, is that right?
Yeah.
Thereabouts, yeah.
So, I mean, I think there was a issue with the afternoons and things there, but I don't know, 6 o'clock in the evening, I mean, I guess
the real question would be if they're starting drawing and stuff on Friday evening, because if they're not, then is Saturday early enough would be the real question on that time. I think it was a great event. I think people really enjoyed it, and it brought people in, and it was beautiful to see. So, I mean, I think it's a good event to have. But I think the one question is, what's the right time?
I think the main heartburn was the fact that we closed it at noon on Friday last year and nothing ever happened until Saturday morning.
So then can we set it for a 6 PM if we need, but leave it between the conversations of the artists and chief at that time, if we're not sure what's happening?
like if you don't end up needing
him
it on
call it?
Friday, could we, if most of the artists aren't gonna need it on Friday, can we potentially leave it open, like make that decision? as it gets a little bit
So
closer?
What'll happen is we'll have all the barricades delivered. The barricades will all be there on the sidewalk, and at the time it's time to close, the barricades get pulled across. So if it's 6 o'clock and everybody wanted to hit it, they can pull the barricades across. If all of a sudden they're not gonna do anything till tomorrow, then leave it open. I mean, I think that that's something that, the art lab can base with their artists, and in discussion with the police department, they can make that determination. And we could approve it at 6, and they'll use their judgment on when it really needs to be done. And that way it eliminates that closed and nothing happened. And I understand last year there was prediction of rain, and that's why nothing
Yeah.
happened, but people weren't thinking that. They were just thinking we closed it for no reason.
Right.
Well, it might be snow this year, so who knows?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
true.
In June, yeah.
How soon would they clean the street after? Is he wanting to clean the street after we get?
Oh, he just said after a few weeks or after it starts wearing off. And maybe it won't be an issue. We get more rain this year. It might not be an issue.
We didn't have any.
Right.
I guess one of the concerns I would have, and one of the things I would personally, echo with potentially the streets being closed, is I remember after it was opened back up and they were still there, I remember even driving past and having people walking out on the road while there was traffic going, so I could see that as a hazard
I
perspective.
saw that too.
So, to potentially say, can we wash it off after it's done, or to do something before the streets open back up, from that perspective, makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't put anything contingent on that. It was just a fear, I guess, from my perspective, so.
Okay. Well, do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the road closure from 6 PM Friday to Sunday afternoon at 5. One change is though, the Oak from Main to Second should be Oak from St. Clair to Second, I believe. So
Oh, yeah.
that'd be my only amendment there, so,
Just eliminate the word main.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll second.
We have a second by Shellen. Everyone understands the motion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7I, approve resolution 2023-27, approving plans and authorizing bids for park trails.
So at the February 15th council meeting, the council discussed the 2023 Park Trail Rehab Project. The Park Board has recommended that the city proceed with the project. Plans were drafted for bidding to include the Wobegon Trail spur from Oak to the Wobegon Trail. Also, we have the Browns Park Trail, which goes from 6th Street around to the new bathroom, and the East River Heights Trail that goes from East River Circle to East River Boulevard. And then we also have the skate park and basketball court. One thing, the skate park is proposed at concrete, with the basketball court portion being asphalt. And the skate park basketball court is bid as an alternate. So when the bids come in, we don't have to check that alternate if it's too high. So, and we kind of did it that way so that we had the option to leave that one on the table depending on what the bids, because concrete fluctuates quite a bit. So what we're looking at is advertising for bids now until the 13th, open the bids on the 26th, and then present them to the park board on May 7th, and then to the city council on May 3rd.
Okay. Is this all budget items?
Yes,
Okay. And it's only going for bids, it isn't awarding anything,
we're just authorizing going out for bid.
right?
How much did we budget for this in the,
So this is actually proposed to be out of the street departments where they usually do the mill and overlay and
Okay.
that. So that's what this is kind of a mill and a rehab. And so that was 160,000.
okay, I did see that. I didn't see the trails. That's why I was questioning on the budget item too.
It's
so
because it's a mill and overlay rehab.
Okay,
It's a park trail paid for by the street department.
okay, thank you.
I was just thinking that the money, we always run up short on our mill and overlays on our streets, and which is more important.
Right.
So, but we'll worry about that when we get to that point. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution 2023-27?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Diane, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Unfinished business, vacation short-term rentals.
Just to let you know that following the adoption of the ordinance regulating the use of residential properties as vacation short-term rentals, the ordinance was published, so it is in effect. We did send a letter out to all existing short-term rentals along with a copy of the ordinance, and the letter outlined the steps necessary to comply. And once an application is submitted, a public hearing will be scheduled, the same as other applications for interim use permits, and then that goes before the city council for final approval. So basically, step one is they'll check with the city, make sure they're eligible. In other words, they meet the requirements. And if that answer is yes, then they go to the county, and the county will do their consultation on the home. And once they get the results from the county on the home, if they wish to proceed, then that's when they would go for their interim use. We're trying to make it so it's the least costly for them, so they're not spending money they don't need to. And then once they get their interim use, the county will give them their lodging permit. So we've had some conversations with a few of them already. So as you know, we gave them all 6 months to come in and get this wrapped up. So it's just kind of information, no action for you required.
Okay. We have no new business. Move on to their consent agenda. We have schedule of claims, unpaid claims of $284,689.92. Paid claims of $20,492.18 for a total of $305,182.10. We have resolution number 23-28, resolution accepting contributions of $140.99 from the men's card playing group to be allocated to the senior center, and $250 from Great River Federal Credit Union to be allocated to the police department for the DARE program. I want, on behalf of the city, thank those groups for their contributions. Is there any questions about the consent agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Diane, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Joe. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Informational items?
Just a few things for you. The city was awarded Tree City designation. This is our 27th year in a row that we have been awarded that. You do have in your packet what's called No Mow May, which means you don't have to mow in May for where you want to grow taller grass for pollinators. I know the county, like you don't mow county ditches and those types of things, and the Audubon Society is promoting that. If we decide to do that, we would pass a resolution at the next meeting to do it, but I gave you some information to understand. There are some places in town where people in their backyards don't like to mow for a period of time because they have all the kinds of flowers that pollinators like. So, you know, some people aren't real happy with the idea of other neighbors not mowing, but as a city, we usually give people the month of May to get their routine together, to get their lawn care done anyway, so it doesn't really impact us that much, but it could, some neighbor to neighbor it could, so something to think about. Reminder, local board of review is Monday, May 10th here at 1 to 1:30 to talk about the 2024 property taxes, the values. And then Spring Metal Recycling Day is Saturday, April 22nd from 8 to noon. And a reminder that now Severe Weather Awareness Week is next week, April 17th to the 21st. Monday is about alerts and warnings. Tuesday, severe weather, lightning and hail. Wednesday, floods. Thursday, tornadoes. The sirens will be sounded on Thursday next week, so everybody will know that. And then Friday is Extreme Heat Day. So this is just informational only.
Any questions about any of those items?
I just had one thing to add because of yesterday's early out, the DARE program, which Mark Grinstead had invited the council to, got moved to April 14th.
Yep,
So if the council hadn't read that,
Yep, I got an email,
okay.
so. Any other comments, questions? Okay, brings us to the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Shallon, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Meeting adjourned.